Okay, guys, we should be live on YouTube.
Welcome to North Logan City Planning Commission meeting on February 6th. We're happy to have you here. Thank you for coming. We will begin by a prayer from Teresa and the pledge by Porter. Okay.
Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful this night for the many blessings that we enjoy. We're grateful to live in a nice part of the world. We're grateful to live in a great city and grateful for all those that work for the city and volunteer for the city to make this such a wonderful place. We ask you that might bless us as members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, that we might be able to do those things that would be best for the majority of citizens in our nation, in our city. Again, we give thanks for all that we have and ask you that might bless us to be able to return to our homes in safety. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Please stand for the pledge and repeat after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Teresa and Porter. We just need to have a motion to adopt the agenda, if we could.
So moved.
Teresa's moved and Heather seconded the motion to adopt the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have the minutes from January 16th Planning Commission meeting. We need to have a motion to adopt those minutes.
So moved.
Was that Gavin?
Yep.
Gavin made the motion. Any second?
I'll second.
Tracy second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Great. Moving on. Scott, any follow-up issues from our previous meeting?
Yeah, I just wanted to go through a couple of these projects that we haven't seen in a while. We've been hyper-focused on the general plan, so it's been a minute since we've talked about some of the projects that have come before the Planning Commission the last several months, but I wanted to just give you a quick update on a couple. So Sage Hills, the 18-lot subdivision south of Smiling H Phase 1 on 6th East and about 2300 north. That application, we're waiting for a final plat to be submitted. The developer, I think, has slowed down. They're looking at selling that project. So that one's in limbo. We'll wait and see if something gets submitted, but it has been approved for preliminary plat and their improvement plans. Village Springs, that project had a city center development plan reviewed by the Planning Commission and then approved by City Council. That project, we are waiting for their formal submittal for their preliminary plat. We do know that they're working on it. We're fielding questions from them, so we know they're preparing that submittal. So we should see that in the next couple of weeks or so, but that should be moving forward for their preliminary plat, which will come back to you guys. And then lastly, the geohazards ordinance, the geologic hazard ordinance. Remember that one? That one was approved by council, and staff has been working behind the scenes to hire our third-party reviewing consultant, who is a licensed geologist, holds all the credentials that we need to have the expertise to review development in our geohazard areas. So we did hire IGES, a firm out of Salt Lake, and they will be the ones who will be reached out to when and if we have applications that need their expertise. So working with those folks should be a good opportunity for us to have a good amount of insight on the geology of projects, mainly up on the bench. But that's where that is. The ordinance is adopted, codified, and in place now. So we'll see where it goes. But those are really just the highlights from previous items on our agenda. Any questions?
Nope. Thank you, Scott. All right, let's move on to item number 1. We're going to have a public hearing for potential recommendation regarding the general plan and the city center plan. Scott, do you want to just give us a little quick rundown?
Yeah, this is a milestone for sure. The Planning Commission's been engaged on these projects for the better part of a year. You'll notice the file number when we first opened this project was technically back in 2023. We were lining up funding, towards the end of 23, had consulting lined up to kick off the beginning of 24. So we've been earnestly working on this for a little bit over a year now. And tonight is kind of the end of the road as far as our public input and a recommendation from the Planning Commission. For everybody in the room, a general plan is a legislatively adopted planning policy document. It is a guiding document. It is not code, but it is our effort as a community to forecast our growth, look at our priorities, make some goals, and identify what our future looks like for land use, transportation, parks, trails, infrastructure, water conservation, environmental concerns, all of the above. So it's a very broad-based document, and it's full of goals and policies and objectives for our future. And I wanted to just run through real quick how we've gotten to where we are now. And what we are very proud of as a community is the amount of public input that we received throughout this process. Our consultant was rural community consultants, and they're working all over the state on various projects, and they were shocked at how well our public engaged with the process, the amount of comments we received, and it's tremendous to have that support of the public to actually take your surveys and provide their feedback and give you guidance so you're not planning in a vacuum. So just as a quick overview, we started our first steps in January of 15. We opened up a website specifically for this project, and we had an interactive map, which you'll see here, where the public was able to geographically place comments about just about any topic. And you'll see that there's various icons, there's housing, there's trails, there's code enforcement, there's commercial, there's transit, there's all sorts of types of comments all over the map. And we had 443 comments throughout town, which is fantastic. And we went through all of those comments, we categorized them, we looked for patterns, we looked for ideas and opportunities, and we reviewed all of that feedback with a steering committee, which was a group of individuals, a few members from the Planning Commission, a few members from City Council, a couple of members from the public, and they served as our sounding board to make sure we were on the right track, that we were thinking similarly about our goals. So we met often to review our comments, but that was our first step. In February of last year, we hosted our first public open house. And that open house was intended to be an introduction to the plan, help the public understand what a general plan was, start to ask them about, priorities, what is the vision for the future, understand some of the issues that they see throughout town. It was kind of a broad first step at that meeting. We hosted that at our old library meeting room, which is under construction. It's interesting to see where we came from and where we are now in this building for adoption. We had 102 residents that stopped by. We had 35 comment cards that were submitted, and we had many, many comments written directly on maps and exhibits. So after February, in March and April, we did a public survey effort, and we sent out 4 different surveys, one for general direction, one for transportation, one for parks and recreation, and land use and housing. And between those 4 survey efforts, we had multiple hundreds of comments between them all. And what's interesting is to see that Parks and Recreation got the most feedback. People love to discuss our Parks and Recreation because it really is a good measure of our quality of life, that we have those amenities and that people are very engaged with our parks and recreation programs. The general direction survey was asking broad questions about topics from housing and transportation and all of the above. But land use and housing asked very specific questions about what types of housing products would be our preferred approach to address some of the housing affordability issues, where housing should be placed if we were to add housing in certain locations. And so it was good to see a good response with 317 responses. And part of what we did with all of our public engagement is we sent out a lot of different avenues of of advertisement, we posted on social media. We sent emails to various HOA presidencies. We printed out flyers in the parks, in the library, here in the city offices. We sent out email listservs to our parks listserv, our library listserv, and we even sent out text messages and emails through our broad communication system for each of these events that we had. So it was in the newsletter. We went as broad as we could to try to cast our net far and wide to get folks to be engaged. From there, in April, we had a joint workshop with our Planning Commission and City Council. We reviewed all the public comment that we had received to date through our surveys, through the first open house. And we really started to look at what is the vision of the community, what is the direction that we need to start going in. And that was great to get both of those bodies in the same room, make sure everybody was looking at the same information and that we were in lockstep as we moved through the process. In May, we had another joint workshop, and that was to start looking at draft materials that would be used at our next public open house. And that open house was in June 6th. We held it at Meadowview at the new pavilion, and that was an important workshop because we talked about land use. We talked about future land use map. We identified the various districts, development districts throughout town, the priorities in those districts, what would and would not be characteristic of those areas. And we sought feedback from the public as to the future composition of our land use. We also used that workshop to discuss the city center concept as well. So here's a couple of exhibits that we looked at as far as some of the things we talked about for housing. These are exhibits that the public reviewed, looking at different housing product types, looking at different districts and zones throughout town. In August, we had another joint workshop, and we reviewed the public input from that open house. So every step of the way, as we got input from the public, we sat down, we looked at it as elected and appointed officials with our steering committee as well to make sense of it. And then in September, this was our last public workshop where we had draft maps for public feedback. Again, we went out and tried to cast our net wide with information dissemination and advertising of this event. And we had several individuals come past throughout the evening. It was a little bit windy, but the weather was good. But we had a lot of maps, a lot of feedback. And this was where we were looking at, different design elements in the city center, try to get public opinion on that aspect as well. The city center master plan was a component of the general plan project, and it was a more site-specific planning effort where we looked at the city center in a lot more detail. And the two biggest things we wanted to understand was, is the original vision from 2013 realistic, feasible, practical? Is that vision even something that could happen in our market, given our economics and our demographics and our region? And so what we wanted to do with that element of the general plan is we wanted to study the data. We wanted to understand the economics of it to either justify or debunk the 2013 vision of, does it downtown mixed use, retail, housing, downtown core, does that work in our day and age? Is it viable, yes or no? And our consulting team had an element of a firm called Zions Public Finance, and they are one of the preeminent firms in the state that studies economics, does market research and analysis to understand, in our situation, how much retail can we hope to absorb in the next several years? How much office space, how much of these different types of land use can we reasonably expect to happen, even though we have shrinking demand for brick and mortar retail? Even though we know a lot of people are going to e-commerce and a lot of our shopping habits are transitioning. And that was a key element that we studied to make sure that if we move forward with the city center vision, that it was a viable option and that it was not something that we should reconfigure or go back to our vision and say that was aspirational, but it wasn't feasible, but that wasn't the case. We found that it was. And so this idea is baked into the general plan. We started off looking at just broad land use, and ultimately we have a mixed-use downtown plan that is highly pedestrian focused with 3rd East, north being on the right side of the screen. This is all walkable pedestrian only. Vehicular access is still north-south. We wanted to make sure that our community could still access this site with vehicular access because we are still a very vehicle oriented community. But over time, and as things change, we'll become more pedestrian friendly. And so we wanted to make sure that people could get to the site with a vehicle, but then they could very easily walk throughout that core. So the City Center Master Plan is a continuance of the vision from 2013, but it's been heavily studied, reinforced with analysis of our demographics and our economic situation, and has been made more specific. Before it was kind of just pretty pictures. Now it is very specific as far as massing, land uses, placement of public spaces, and those types of things. In October, another joint workshop to look through the updated draft of the general plan, City Center Master Plan. These were our final working drafts, and we wanted to make sure that we were comfortable with where they were at before the holiday break. Because our plan was in January to put it out to the public for a final open public comment period. So we gave everybody a break for the holidays. We didn't want folks to see this or miss out on this because they were out traveling or not aware that this project was continuing. But in January, we did hold that open public comment period. We put it out for a period of a little over 2 weeks, and we said, here are the final drafts. Provide us with whatever feedback and comments you have. And what was surprising is we did receive a couple of comments, but not very many, which is indicative of either we didn't advertise it well enough or people are generally comfortable with it and didn't have a whole lot to say. And we know it went out to the same amount of folks that were highly engaged beforehand, so we know it went where it needed to go, but we feel like we're in a good place from the public input side of things. So the final drafts are obviously still available for consumption, but at this point, the Planning Commission needs to hold a formal public hearing and formulate a recommendation to City Council. And that recommendation can be as detailed as you feel it needs to be or as simple as you feel it needs to be. But that is the formal process whereby the public has one more chance to have a public input formally before this body, before it goes to City Council for their consideration and potential adoption. Staff has a positive recommendation of this project, and there are some findings in the staff report that could be adopted if you were to make those findings for your motion. Any other questions, thoughts on the process?
Any questions? Okay. That's it. Thank you, Scott. It's been a good process. So we'll open up for a public hearing. Let me read your instructions. Before you begin, please state your name for the record. Speak into the microphone so your comments can be recorded. Please limit your statements to 3 minutes. You're not, and we'll time you up here. You're not allowed to combine or bank minutes to speak on behalf of others. Please phrase your opinions in the form of statements, not questions. A public hearing is your opportunity to express your opinions to the City Council or the Planning Commission, not a time to ask questions or to expect dialogue between yourself and the Commission. Please address your comments to the Council, not to the public. The Commission might ask questions about your comments in order for them to better understand you. In the future, note that if you have questions or need to discuss an issue, you may meet with the City Council members or the appropriate city staff members before the public hearing where dialogue can take place. You may provide a written statement as your input for a hearing. You may read your entire statement or summarize it. The 3-minute limit still applies. You may provide a copy of a written statement to the city recorder. He will make copies for the City Council and the Commission, and the written statement will become a part of the public record. However, the written submitted statement will not be included in the minutes of the meeting. So we will open our public hearing. Anyone that would like to comment, now's your chance.
My name is Cindy Beeston. I want to comment about the city center plan. I attended open houses, wrote comments. I met specifically with Scott personally. I didn't write down the date that was, Scott, in the first part of the year, gave him a written list of suggestions, etc. I attended a meeting that was a joint meeting between the city council and the planning commission, where you had feedback from the consultant about all of the information that was being gathered. There weren't very many of us residents there. I think there was 2. Anyway, in none of those meetings did I ever hear one person say, I want a main street with shops in the city center. No one. The only person actually that did say that was a member of the city council. And she said, this is what I want. And I said, but it's not practical. People don't shop that way anymore. And so I went around and I asked my neighbors, what do you think of this idea? Because I wanted feedback. I don't want to just go by my opinion. I wanted feedback from those people that I associate with, both young and old. The only people that say they were nostalgic for a city center with a main street with shops were people over 80 years old. Those were the only ones. The younger generation, like my children, or, let's say anyone under 40, said they don't do shopping that way anymore. What is the purpose of having a city center? The purpose of a city center is to bring people together, to bring a community together, to have them engaged in activities and doing things together. I think that the community center that we're building off of the library will do that. It will bring people together. But shops, specifically shops on a little dinky main street, aren't going to bring people together. They're not going to provide the sense of community that we really need and want. You've done all this research and all this, put out this effort to gain input, but you're not listening. You're not listening to the people. I'm sorry that January was a wash month for me and I was off other places, but I didn't have a chance to respond to you during that month to say, we do not need a main street with shops. That is not the way people shop anymore. That is not what is going to bring our community together. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Russell Goodwin. I just was able to get a copy of the plan a week ago, January 30th. So I'm still going through it. I'm about halfway through, and these are just some thoughts I've collected at this point. I don't intend them to be comprehensive or thorough. And I will only be reading part of it here. I explain why I wasn't able to get the plan any earlier, and the back couple of pages are just recent news articles buttressing my point of view, I think. But I'm going to start on the second page, the bottom paragraph. And near the bottom there, it is claimed, also my comments are on the city center largely here. It is claimed there is a, quote, community desire for a more defined city center and increased local amenities, end quote. The whole city center concept arose out of a foreign California idea of what constitutes entertainment and an unwillingness to put in the hard work to salvage and reinvent Main Street, our real income generator. It postulated anchor tenants, if you will, of city offices, the library, and the police station, that has not come to pass. It was founded on an understanding of Disneyland and Williamsburg and postulated a scenario in which residents would largely leave their homes to drive to a fictional recreation of a historical North Logan, now conceived to contain New England sensibilities, to socialize and reminisce of the good old days for a few hours or a few days, to then get back in their cars, maybe some carpool, and drive back home. What a preposterous proposal. What an expensive proposal, paying consultants to essentially rubber stamp a mayor's favorite idea, to Civic Solutions getting paid for years to draft so-called form-based supporting regulations that, as near as I can tell, were never finished. To more consultants to justify all the previous expenditures that they are only happy to do, not to mention the distraction in time and effort by city staff and personnel chasing this chimera. When we have a short distance away a real city center that is a real commercial entity and a real money generator on Main Street that has been allowed to become an eyesore and used car lot. And when we have a real, actual historical center.
Mr. Goodwin, your time's up.
Enjoyed my 3 minutes of democracy.
Thank you.
I'm Karen Pahlke. North Logan residents. I'm concerned about the availability of low-income housing. Affordable housing is a nice little title, but I don't see that reality happening. I see discrimination against people who have manufactured homes. I see discrimination against people who want to have smaller lots. I live on a 0.12 acre lot, and as I look around my neighborhood, most people are not taking care of their lots. And yet, as I looked at the zoning is planning on bigger lots than that. And if you're going to have less expensive homes, you need to have smaller lots. I have a daughter who lives in Ireland on a 1/10 of an acre lot, and that's standard in there. Their homes are $900,000 homes because homes are expensive there. But I'm concerned about looking realistically at what is affordable for people and allowing that kind of a home to be built. Even in the Village Springs development, which was supposed to be for seniors, I believe, that area that is requiring larger homes than most seniors want to have. The Planning Commission and the City Council are building their version, not listening to the public as to what is needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we will close the public hearing and we appreciate your comments. Thank you. Now it's the commission's job to decide what kind of a recommendation we're going to send on to the city council regarding the city center plan and the general plan. So dialogue from the commission. I know a lot of us have been working on this for a long time. Any dialogue? Any questions? Any comments? Teresa?
I'll make a comment, just that I'm very supportive of both the general plan and the city center plan. Like I said in lots of meetings, I hope I live to be able to see some of the city center because I think it's going to be great for our community. I think my neighborhood that's right next door, I think they're going to love having a walking area. And I think it'll be fun for mothers with young children. Anyway, I'm extremely supportive of it and appreciate the recommendations from the staff that explained the findings. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Gavin?
Yeah, I just wanted to first off thank Scott and the city planning and all the staff that have supported this for the council and for over a year and a half or so of effort. But I'd especially like to thank those who've come out tonight and all those who've come out to the dozen or so opportunities and online. And thanks for sharing your your opinions and where you think we ought to go. Yeah, I too have read the general plan and the downtown plan and been involved more in the general plan side, but I really appreciate the thought that's gone into it, and yeah, I'm supportive of both.
Thanks. Anybody else over there? I can't see you, so you have to.
I was
Heather?
just going to say that I feel like we have heard from quite a few members of our community with positive recommendations and guidance towards the plan that's put together, and acknowledge that with such a grand plan and so much that's involved, that it's hard to please and appeal to everyone's desires and requests and vision. There's maybe some things in here that I would maybe do different, or that Nam would do different, or Scott, because there's just those little tweaks that we all might see differently. But I think in the overall perspective, I think that there's been a lot of time and dedication and thought from the feedback that we've received. And I think that I'm grateful for all the work that everyone's done, and grateful for all the input. And if we can't please everyone and there's disappointment, we're aware that that's going to happen in any city. You can go anywhere, there's going to be someone disgruntled about something, and we acknowledge that and we're aware, but we're also very grateful for we have to make decisions somewhere, and this is the decision that I feel the majority of the community has come to. So
Thank you. Porter?
Yeah, I think I really like the vision of the city center in particular, taking into account that the community said they wanted to preserve the small town feel of North Logan. And yet on the other side, we have the state saying we have to have affordable housing. And I think that this is a good step in the right direction. It consolidates a lot of density into a small area, and it allows the rest of the community to keep that small town feel. And I think that's a hard balance that we have to consider and look at. And so, and I really do like in this proposal, especially again, looking at the city center too, to be an anchor of the community. There's an outdoor, amphitheater space. There's a proposed theater. I mean, there's a lot of civic engagement that could be happening in this area as well. So I have some concerns about how it might be actualized, how we might get to that point. But I think it's a great vision, which is what the point of the general plan is. And then we'll have work to do to go in. Well, not us in particular, but the city and others will have work to do to go get it to come to fruition and come to reality. But I love the vision. I think it's a great concept.
Thank you. Gavin?
I move that we forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for the 2025 general plan and the 2025 City Center master plan, incorporating the findings in the staff recommendation.
Okay, it has been moved. Any second?
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved in second that we proceed with the positive recommendation to the City Council for the general plan and the city center plan. And after we vote, I have a comment, but all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. We'll send on a positive recommendation to the City Council. I just have to say that we moved here 32 years ago. I hate to even say that. And when we got here, we were so happy to be in North Logan because of the way it felt and the way it looked, and thought, wow, well, now we hope nobody else moves here ever again because we're here. But that's not realistic. And I'm grateful for the work it takes to plan for our community, to have a plan, to try and keep most people happy. And I'm pretty impressed with the work that's gone on with the services that have helped us, and the people that have been on the committees, and the public for their response. I'm pretty happy with how things have turned out to this point. And so even though people moved here after we did, I think that it's good for North Logan to have a plan, to have a guide, to have something we can work with so we can be still a beautiful place, and I appreciate that. And all the members on the board, Scott, you've done a good job. Ryan, thank you. So I think we'll just move on to any more staff business.
Yeah, just another thank you for everybody who's been involved. There's been a lot of time that folks have dedicated towards a project like this, much more so than a traditional year for a planning commissioner, because there's a lot of extra meetings, middle of the day lunch meetings, late night meetings like we're here today, joint work sessions. So we're appreciative to everybody who's chipped in along the way. As far as staff business, there's just one item I wanted to bring back up to everybody's attention. It's the Spring APA Conference here in Logan. That's the American Planning Association for the state of Utah. That is May 7th through the 9th at the Riverwoods Conference Center. And early bird registration goes through February 28th. So we'd like to save some taxpayer dollars. If you guys would like to attend, we'll go ahead and get you registered as soon as possible. So if you think you can, we'll get you registered. It's convenient because it's local, so you guys can come and go to various sessions. And once the agenda is published and you see an item you want to make sure you can get to, take lunch break or whatever, then we'll take any time you guys have available to join us for that conference.
Those dates again, please.
May 7th through the 9th.
And when is the registration finished?
Early bird registration is through the 28th. If you don't think you can make it, that's not the end of the world. We can still register all the way up until the day of, but if we want to save some money, we'll do it. Okay.
Anything else? Okay, any other commission business? Nope. You guys, we are record time on this one. This is good.
It's been a lot of meetings.
It has been a lot of meetings, good meetings. All right, our next planning commission will be on the 20th of February. And with that, we'll adjourn our meeting, and we appreciate those of you that take the time to come, and appreciate your comments and your nice faces. So we're adjourned. Should I do a little thing? Done.